Most couples dream of welcoming a baby into the world, but some couples are faced with obstacles along the way. Some couples are unable to conceive naturally and find themselves seeking the services of a surrogate. For one woman, the idea of becoming a surrogate mother for one such deserving couple seemed like a dream come true. Running low on cash and seeing that becoming a surrogate offered decent compensation, it seemed like the solution to all her problems. But for reasons beyond anyone's wildest dreams, nobody imagined how messy this particular surrogacy would become. Jessica Allen was happily married and had been blessed with 2 beautiful children, but all that was about to change. An average American family, they had decided to take the next step and purchase their first house. But soon, the couple realized that they'd made a mistake. The house ended up being more than they could afford. That's when Jessica decided to do something drastic. When she came across the advert posted by a young couple in China, she didn't hesitate. But that's when all her problems began. Jessica's husband, Jasper, knew that becoming a surrogate mother can take an emotional toll. When Jessica told him about her decision, he voiced his concerns. He worried that Jessica wouldn't be able to come to terms with carrying a baby and then having to give it up. What if she couldn't sever the emotional ties? But Jessica reassured him that she was in a good headspace and that she'd deal with her feelings if and when they arose. But Jasper never imagined just how attached she would become to the baby, and how much he would too. Jasper was not pleased with Jessica's decision. She had promised that she wouldn't become attached, but he knew his wife. She loved her own children fiercely. How could she say that she wouldn't form a bond with a new baby? He was also unhappy with what his wife becoming a surrogate would entail for their relationship. The couple would not be allowed to be intimate again until Jessica's pregnancy test was positive and she was officially pregnant. Finally, the results were in, but Jessica's first ultrasound left the entire family floored. Jessica was due for a routine checkup, not realizing that there was a surprise waiting for her. The doctor scanned her belly and immediately noticed something unusual on the ultrasound. Instead of 1 heartbeat, there were 2. Jessica left the doctor's rooms in a daze, completely incredulous. When the reality of what had happened started to sink in, her fears gave way to excitement. She couldn't wait to call the couple and tell them the news. After some negotiation, the couple agreed that Jessica would be entitled to just 1 hour of bonding time after she had given birth to their babies. This would allow Jessica to say a proper goodbye to the beings she had carried for the last 9 months. Unsurprisingly, Jessica had become rather attached to them, but she graciously accepted their generous offer. The 9 months had flown by. It had been an easy pregnancy, and Jessica couldn't believe it was already time to end this surreal chapter of her life. She knew that saying goodbye would be bittersweet, but when she welcomed the new little lives into the world, her feelings changed. Jessica had given birth to twins, but she instantly noticed something strange. She studied their faces again, and something just didn't add up. But determined to make the most of her bonding hour, she pushed the uneasy feeling aside. Marveling at the 2 precious beings she had brought into the world, she looked fondly down at their faces. But the feeling just wouldn't go away. Something wasn't right. When the hour was up and it was time to hand the babies back, she hesitated. With all her instincts screaming at her, she said goodbye to the twins. The overwhelming feeling that she had made an enormous mistake stayed with her for days. Then on the 3rd day, she began to feel better. As difficult as it had been, she had made the right decision. She had done something selfless for a couple in need, and she was proud of herself. But this feeling didn't last long. One evening, Jessica was getting ready for bed when her phone announced the arrival of a message. When she read it, her heart sank. The message was accusatory in tone, accompanied by a photo of the twins. And the more Jessica stared at it, the more uneasy she became. Her fears started to bubble to the surface once more as the realization slowly dawned on her. How had she not seen it before? The photograph only highlighted the glaringly obvious. In her heart, she knew what had happened, but what she didn't know was that she was about to begin the biggest battle of her life. The message that glared at Jessica simply said, "They are not the same, right?" So Jessica wasn't the only one who had noticed the striking difference between the twins. The shockwave of realization jolted through her as she sat on the end of the bed, reading the message that would shatter her world. Before she could even regain her composure, the couple shot her a question that she was completely unprepared for. Jessica, read the second message carefully. Have you thought about why they are different? Although Jessica knew the terrible truth by now, she was still completely blindsided. On one hand, she was relieved that she wasn't alone in her observation, but it didn't make the discovery any less painful. Bracing herself for the worst, she prepared for what she knew was coming. But how had this happened? And what had she done? The revelation that one of the twins looked familiar wasn't a new one for Jessica, but she had refused to believe it was possible at first. While one of the babies was fair-skinned and resembled his biological parents, the other bore a striking resemblance to her husband, Jasper. With her hands trembling as she grasped her phone, she started to consider the implications. Based on this new evidence, she couldn't ignore her fears any longer. There was only one thing for it. She had to know for sure. Continuing to message one another, Jessica and the new mother discussed what to do. With worries racing through their minds, they texted back and forth until they settled on a solution. They had agreed on a DNA test to solve the mystery once and for all. When the conversation had reached its conclusion, Jessica's mind was abuzz with trepidation. She thought about the possible outcomes at 1,000,000 miles per hour. But when the tests finally came back, her worst fears were confirmed. The results from the DNA test were absolutely baffling to everyone who saw them. They confirmed Jessica's fears, and the gravity of the situation started to come crashing down on her. It was any mother's worst nightmare. Jessica had done something almost too awful to bear. She had given her own baby away, and she hadn't even known. But she had done everything by the book. How was it even biologically possible? The results were in, and DNA doesn't lie. Everyone was awed. Not even the doctors could believe it. The results stated that one of the twins that Jessica had been carrying was in fact the biological child of Jessica and Jasper, and a medical anomaly. It turns out that after the couple's embryo had been implanted in Jessica, she had continued to ovulate. This meant that Jessica was able to conceive a child while she was already pregnant. Naturally, this caused enormous problems. Jessica and her husband felt overwhelmed, but then the excitement started to bloom in their hearts. Even though they were already struggling financially, they knew they would get through it. They had a baby. At least Jessica still had the money from the surrogacy to get them through. But the feeling of elation wasn't to last. The parents that Jessica became a surrogate for dropped a devastating bombshell on Jessica and Jasper. Jessica and Jasper began talks to begin the process of getting their baby back. But the other couple's terms were wholly unexpected. They would have to buy him back. They said that they could either reimburse them the $220 that they had paid for the surrogacy or start the long process for adopting their son. Then, the negotiations quickly turned ugly. Suddenly, the other couple began pointing fingers. If Jessica had followed protocol, this would never have happened. The accusations continued to fly, but Jessica insisted that she had followed everything by the book, waiting until her pregnancy tests came positive before being intimate with her husband. But the more Jessica protested, the more agitated the couple became. Nasty remarks implying that Jessica would never see her son again if she didn't pay the money back flew back and forth. Jessica was sent into a flat panic before the real reason behind the threats came out. The couple then revealed that they were being encouraged to haggle with Jessica over her son's price by their lawyer. They said that they had been told that Jessica had threatened to take them to court over custody, but Jessica had done no such thing. In fact, Jessica had never even considered it. All she wanted was for the ordeal to be over and to have her baby, Malachi, back in her arms. With the truth finally out, the end seemed like it was in sight at last. Would there be a happy ending? After a lot of deliberation, and with the crooked lawyer out of the picture, Jessica finally got her baby boy back. Jasper and Jessica welcomed the fifth addition to their family with open arms, and they couldn't be happier. The story has since caused international outrage and awe, but little Malachi is blissfully unaware of the ordeal his parents went through and the mark he made on medical history. All that matters is that he is back with his biological parents where he belongs.